Hey Baltimore, welcome back to I Got Time with Phylicia Porter. Today, we are talking about the impact of the government. And remember, last week we talked about levels of government. So there was the legislative, executive, and judicial branch. Today, we are delving into how their policies can affect not only just your person, your family, and your community as well. Government is broad, but government shows up every day in your life. It shows up in your rent, shows up in your mortgage, shows up in your child care, shows up in education, and it shows up in your paycheck. Let's start at the basics. What policy actually is. Let me just simplify something for you, Baltimore. Policy is not merely a decision. It is organizing. It is educating. It is also making sure that policy gets implemented in the way that you want to for your community. So it is about who gets access. It is about who qualifies. It is about who pays, who benefits, and also, Baltimore, who does not benefit. We talk about a lot of these policies in a way that it's beneficial to folks, but we also need to talk about the indirect consequences of who does not benefit from these policies. When we say housing policy, granted, I tune out. Councilwoman Ramos, that was a joke. I tune in, okay? But most people, when we say housing policy, they tune out. But when I talk to you about how your rent could increase $250, $450, now you sitting at the kitchen table trying to do math, right? Because I do it too. I got the Rocket Money app. I got the budget app. We budget too. We elected officials, we budget. But before that housing policy went into play, there were several steps at various levels of government in order to get there. So it's not just, can your grandmother or can you afford to stay in your home, right? It is, can we actually afford to live a high quality of life in our neighborhoods with the living wages that we make, with the affordability of said apartment and or house? Do we have quality amenities in neighborhoods like grocery stores, daycare centers, in order for us to stay in that said neighborhood? Now I think I got your attention, Baltimore. Now let's go through a real example. So when a real estate project comes into the district, your council person is more than likely going to be aware of that project for various issues like zoning, maybe a change in zoning, maybe just getting the developer getting a feel for the community and the neighborhood, right? So it looks really weird when you have people that are making $13,000 per year and we have luxury apartments that are upwards of $2,700 to $3,000. Now, I get it. There are folks that be like, Phylicia, we need mixed use development. I'm not saying that. I'm not disputing that either. What I am saying is that we need to build housing for the individuals that are within that community. So if we need more wages, let's see how we can bring in more folks to have quality jobs, right? How can we connect these folks to quality jobs for their upward mobility, making sure that they have more money in their paycheck at the end of the month than less. So they are not starting each month in a deficit, right? Making sure that if they need transit opportunities, and I don't want to just focus on bike lanes here, we're focusing on buses, we're focusing on mobility access. All of those things encompass housing policy. And let's go through an example at the local, state, and federal level of how said policies and how said housing policies are developed, enacted, and implemented. Local, we talked about the zoning laws. We talked about the ordinances that need to happen at the local level that impact that said real estate project. At the state level, there may be an opportunity for a developer to utilize some of those state funds from the State Department of Housing and Community Development. There are grants that are available at the state level that provide a subsidy for some of these small and mid developers. And then at the federal level, and I don't want to give that man any more conversation, but what is happening right now at our federal agencies, he is literally gutting federal agencies, and it's impacting areas like Baltimore. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, where we get our federal subsidies, right, to supplement housing, 23% of my district has some sort of public subsidy related to housing. Where do you think that money comes from? That money comes from the federal government. And if it's taken away, what do you think is going to happen? We're going to see a rise in evictions. We're going to see a rise in unhoused people and families. We're going to see couch surfing, where young people are going to school, but they don't have an actual physical address to go home to. And once you see it that way, Baltimore, I guarantee you cannot unsee it. Make sure if there's anything that I've said just now that you don't understand, let me know in the comments. Let me know your personal story. Because again, I've got time to go through and listen, but also educate and provide context of how we got here and actionable solutions, how we can get out of here, Baltimore. So Baltimore, I'm going to go through another example. And this is something that is plaguing Baltimore right now. Believe me, I experience it every day. The potholes. The potholes. I get it. But I want to provide some clarity and some context on the potholes that we see in the city. Most people don't know that Baltimore is the only jurisdiction that pays for its roads. Shout out to my colleague, my friend, Councilman Ryan Dorsey, who is leading the charge from the city council for transportation funds from the state level called highway user revenue fees. I want to shout out Delegate Robin Lewis, newly minted chair of the Baltimore City delegation, and Delegate Mark Edelson, who just had a little baby, this cute little baby. But at the state level, they are fighting to make sure that those state highway user revenue fees are coming back to Baltimore to repair our roads. Now, hear me when I say this. There was a pause. We were not getting some of those highway user revenue fees for some time. We are now in a place where we're revving back up to get those highway user revenue fees back into Baltimore to repair the potholes. Let's go through the example at the local, state, and federal level so you can see how something as tangible and as basic as a pothole. This last snowstorm, man, I saw potholes big as craters on Mars, okay? On the moon, not even on Earth. You dial 311 to report a pothole. It tracks back to the Department of Transportation. They come out and fill it. And if they can't, we need additional dollars to handle and deal with the infrastructure issues that we're seeing in Baltimore. So like Patapsco. Patapsco is such a large project that we're not just filling potholes anymore. We're continuously filling potholes to make sure that we can keep a Band-Aid on it, but we are raising money at the state and federal level because the infrastructure is not there. And quite honestly, that takes time. I wish we had all the money to give you all, but shout out to the Biden-Harris administration for providing those infrastructure dollars coming back to our cities, and our cities accurately and equitably using those dollars to fill the infrastructure holes that have been lasting over 100 years. A pothole isn't just a budget line item in our budgets here, Baltimore. A pothole is an indicator of the advocacy from community, from elected officials at the local, state, and federal level so that you are able to see in real time roads getting repaved and resurfaced. It is something that is tangible, but it's also something that complex at every level of government. We all have to be in alignment at every level of the policy framework and chain in order for said policies to truly impact our community, in order for the dollars to come back to our community, in order for the equitable distribution to come back to our community. That's what we're talking about here, Baltimore, when we talk about how policy impacts something as simple as a pothole. Another real life example, Baltimore, our rents keep going up. And I know what it feels like to get that notice that your rent is going up. Sometimes $250, sometimes $400. Luckily, there is a cap on how much your rent can increase. Now, Baltimore, when your rent goes up, you don't have any money left over in your paycheck to get groceries, childcare, your pet food, right? We love our furry creatures. Now you're having real conversations about what you can afford, medications that you may need that you cannot get because your rent goes up. So again, let's take this example at the local, state, and federal level. Your local level, area zoning laws. Again, shout out to my colleague and friend, Councilman Ryan Dorsey. He gave me such a great history on the racism of the zoning laws in Baltimore. Most people don't even know Baltimore is home of redlining. So when we're talking about how there are certain real estate practices and also government entities that exclude people from particular communities based on real estate covenants, sometimes based on HOA fees, that is a perfect storm, sometimes for systems of concentrated poverty. All of that takes into account. So those zoning laws are so important, and they are controlled by people like me, your city council person. So whenever a real estate developer needs a zoning change, they start with your local city council person. And that is an opportunity for your local city council person to mandate engagement with community. Most developments in District 10 see a 6 to 9 month engagement process. And that is something that is mandated by my office in order to garner my support, to introduce that zoning change. Remember, we can introduce laws. That's our job as city council, is to introduce and make laws. The zoning that comes from that can impact the entire community. At the state level, there are state level grants and also subsidies that can be provided to the developer. Those funds help subsidize the market rent and or affordability for that area. Some projects have 20 to 30% affordable housing for that particular area, and some of the project may be market rate. Those subsidies, in order to make sure that the folks that have lived in that area can stay in that area, most of that money comes from the state level. So shout out to Mark Anthony and the GBC, Greater Baltimore Committee, Mayor Brandon Scott, on getting the Vacants Initiative in the city of Baltimore to the tune of $3 billion. That is $3 billion coming back to the city of Baltimore to build our stock, to subsidize a lot of those homes that are being built, but also to make sure that we are producing that housing stock, that vacant housing stock that we are seeing in the city of Baltimore. It is being addressed with funds from the state level and also private entities as well. And then last but certainly not least, our federal level. Again, if we don't have the federal subsidies, if we don't have the federal allocation, if Congress does not appropriate these funds devoted to housing and urban development, folks here in Baltimore will not obtain the funding they need in order to live a high quality of life. And after that, they become unhoused through eviction. And so those federal dollars coming down to the city of Baltimore, impacting communities every single day. That's just one example, Baltimore. When we're talking about how policies impact communities, it's not just this policy doesn't impact me, this policy doesn't mean anything to me. No, we're not having that here. I got time to go through the example so that you have a clear understanding of the context of the policy, but also you have the full color of the policy. There are some media outlets that will repeatedly tell you lies. They will tell you lies. You may not have time to figure it out, Baltimore, but I got time to educate you. I got time to educate my people about what policies are coming down the pike, but also the policy impacts to our community every single day. As we go through these series, let me know in the comments. If you don't understand anything that I am saying, we can retool. This is for you, Baltimore. This is for you to really, truly have an understanding of civic education, the political process, the power of organizing, educating, and demanding results from your elected official at every level of government. Baltimore, we don't have time to tap out. We don't have time to be distracted. We've got to make sure that every policy that's coming back from the federal government, the state government, and what's being discussed and implemented at the city council level. We've got to make sure that it's impacting your everyday life and your everyday communities in a positive way, Baltimore. We can no longer put our heads in the sand. We've got to tap in and we've got to tune in, because that is how we're going to see true change in community, not just from one person, not 15, but from the entire city of Baltimore. That's when we're going to see change. Talk soon, Baltimore.